When I came across this graph, I thought it was really a perfect and simple image of what I call trajectory and the importance of we as parents paying attention to the developmental trajectory of our child. So let's see if I can break this down for you. This is not about compound interest or simple interest, but the way these lines are moving really made me think about my child with autism and typical children who do not have autism. What's happening to their thinking over time? So, if we just replace that y axis, that vertical axis money, with thinking, there's definitely some interesting thinking that happens during the early part of our child's development that really set them on a trajectory of real future independence. And I'm going to argue, and I am a credentialed teacher, so I feel like I can make this argument. I'm going to argue that the overemphasis of school and placing your hopes that, well, if your child is just performing academically, then everything's going to be fine. I'd like to blow a few holes in that myth. Obviously, human beings have been on the planet for a very long time without school and have managed to live successfully. So, the kind of thinking that I'm talking about is not the kind of thinking that happens in school. It's not the kind of thinking that is taught. So, if we look at this, the black line to me, let's say, represents my child with autism. And this black line and the green line are together for a period of time, but then they start to diverge, and they diverge in very specific ways that we don't necessarily can put our finger on because it's quite unconscious, what we can do with our human mind. But children with autism, for the most part, as they're getting older, as they're passing through time, they're learning stuff. So this black line, you'll see it has a positive slope, but the slope is somewhat fixed. Well, it actually is fixed. It's a straight line. So there's a fixed slope there. And our children are capable of learning a lot of fixed static things that they often get in school and their different therapies. And we can look at this and say, see, it's working. We can show growth. And that black line does, in fact, show growth. However, that black line doesn't look like the green line. And the green line is actually moving and changing and shifting in real time. The slope is not fixed. In fact, we might describe this green line as something that's happening quite exponential. And we can see very young children, definitely several years before they enter kindergarten, are just exploding in their learning. In fact, I think one could argue that a child's early learning is very much like compound interest. The learning is compounding on top of itself. So you can imagine how devastating it is for us parents when our child is not on the trajectory of this green line that you see here. And what we parents end up feeling is that over time, our children, while they're learning stuff and they're doing more stuff, are just drifting farther and farther away from their peers. So if you were to let these lines continue on their trajectories, this is what we see. And it's why all those evidence-based practices actually don't have any evidence that these learning strategies actually equal lifelong independence, because a special kind of thinking has to take place in order for that independence to unfold for a child. And that's what RDI focuses on. It focuses on this dynamic forms of thinking and problem solving. So I just wanted to show you this little graph here because this really, I think, captures the difference in the trajectories of children with autism versus children who do not have autism. And what we want to do for kids with autism is to make that black line look more like the green line. That our kids with autism are also exploding in this area of dynamic thinking because they're going to need that if they're going to have any hopes for a successful and high quality and independent future. So I really thought this graph spoke spoke volumes to me, and I hope my deconstructing it for you helps you appreciate and see why the trajectory matters. So let's roll up our sleeves and get to work and start shifting the trajectory of our kids with autism. They deserve it. Thank you.